Hi, I'm Terry Noreen Bailey, and I'm going to talk a little bit about my journey dealing with thyroid cancer. Sometime in 1995, I began noticing a drastic decrease in my energy level. I would go to bed at night, sleep for 6 or 7 hours, and wake up still feeling very tired. I also began gaining weight and having pain throughout my entire body, numbness in my hands and arms, and extreme sensitivity to cold. I knew that these symptoms weren't normal for me, so during my annual exam that year, I mentioned them to my doctor. So I again explained the symptoms to another doctor, and he then ordered some blood work. He did another thyroid function test, and he also decided to order a thyroid stimulating hormone test. But he explained to me that since my thyroid function tests were normal, the thyroid stimulating hormone test would probably be normal as well. But luckily, he ordered that test because the thyroid stimulating hormone test came back extremely abnormal, even though the thyroid function test was still normal. That then led him to do a biopsy on my thyroid gland. The biopsy consisted of him randomly sticking syringes in my throat, hoping that he hit the thyroid gland in order to withdraw the fluid out of the thyroid gland. And that was a very weird feeling, but it was necessary. These tests finally came back and they were positive for follicular carcinoma. The test further revealed that the left side of my thyroid had stopped functioning completely, and that was the side that had the lump, and the right side was barely working. The treatment options were explained to me, and the best option was doing a thyroidectomy complete, which consisted of removing my entire thyroid gland through an incision in my throat, followed by radiation ablation therapy, and then 3 days of isolation in the hospital where I couldn't have contact with anyone. And then I have to now take medication, a thyroid synthetic hormone called Synthroid. I take that every day for the rest of my life. This all occurred in 1997 in Landstuhl, Germany, and I have since had one additional radiation ablation therapy followed by another 3 days of isolation in the hospital. I've had no effects from the treatment, and as long as I take my medication daily, I feel great. I'm now 14 years cancer-free. I see my doctor annually, and I take my Synthroid daily. Since my body no longer has the ability to produce the hormone that gives us our metabolism and no way to burn calories, I'm diligent about taking my medication, eating right, and exercising in order to maintain my weight. Since my surgery, I've lost 116 pounds, and I've maintained that weight loss for the past 7 years. So I just want to let everyone know to always listen to your body. And if you're not satisfied with one doctor's diagnosis, keep seeing other doctors until you feel you are being heard and treated properly, because no one knows your body as well as you do.
Hi, my name is Shonda McFadden Savari, and I'm a breast cancer survivor. I had my bilateral mastectomy February 11, 2011. I remember the day very well that a thought popped up in my head that I needed to get a mammogram. The very next day, I had an appointment with my gynecologist that was previously scheduled. So, went to my appointment, and after my examination, I said to my gynecologist that I had a thought that popped up in my head that I needed to get a mammogram. And so she says, okay, normally we don't do mammograms until 40, but we'll go ahead and do it. So she arranged for the mammogram. A week later, I received a letter in the mail that there were calcifications and changes in tissue on my mammogram. I called in and requested to do another mammogram. And the first mammogram was a screening mammogram, so the second mammogram was a digital, was a diagnostic mammogram. So I went back for the second mammogram, and at that time, I remember the radiologist saying to me, honey, I can't look at you and tell you that you don't have breast cancer. He said, I'm going to have to do a biopsy. So he wanted to do the biopsy after Christmas. I'm like, no, sir, I need you to go ahead and do this biopsy now. So they brought me back in December the 23rd to do the biopsy. They did the biopsy, and Christmas was set on the Saturday in December 2010. So the biopsy was that Thursday. They didn't call me until that Monday, 2 days after Christmas. After the fact, I found out that it was documented and confirmed that the cancer was in both breasts 2 days before Christmas. So I got the phone call that Monday that I had cancer. So I'm thinking, okay, I have breast cancer. Which breast? Well, the nurse told me that I had cancer in both breasts. I had 2 different types of cancer in my right breast, 2 different stages of cancer in my left breast. So my husband, my kids, and I, after crying and asking questions, we did our research. I decided to get 3 different opinions. I went with my third opinion, which was from my surgical oncologist at Emory, who actually did my surgery. When I decided that I was going to have both breasts removed, I spoke with my children about it. And you may think I'm crazy, but the reason being is because, I love my husband loves me. But my grandmother always told me, and this doesn't have anything to do with cancer, a spouse can walk out on you anytime. So I know that my kids are mine, and I know and believe that my husband is mine, but, he is human and things can change. So just in case if he's going to make any changes, I had to talk to my kids. And so I spoke with my kids, asked them how do they feel about me having both breasts removed. My son said, what I said to them was, would you be embarrassed if when mommy goes to school, I didn't have any breasts and all the other little kids, if their mommies had breasts? So my son looked at me and he said, all we care about is you living. My daughter said, I wish somebody would kick at you so I could kick them in the face. So I said, you will be okay with me taking both my breasts out? So they said, fine. They were with me. So then I went to my husband, and he knew, I told him that I was going to go to the kids first because I wanted their opinion, and I wanted to be sure that they were going to be okay with it. And so I went to him, and I was like, I talked to the kids, and they're fine. So I'm going to take these breasts off. But I need you to know that if you're going to have a problem with it, you need to let me know, because cancer didn't take my self-esteem, and you won't either. Cancer did not hurt me, and you're not going to hurt me either. So before I stay with you and allow you to cheat, and I know about it, or I suspect it, we need to go our separate ways. If you feel like you need breasts, you let me know so you can free yourself, and I can free myself. But I will not sit around and drive myself crazy worrying about if I can satisfy you or not. And so he looked at me and he was like, I'll break your neck before I let you go. I can't believe you coming at me with some craziness like that. But I just had to let him know, and oftentimes when women or men have diagnosis, it's hard for the spouse. And my husband was and he still is very supportive, but I just needed to let him know that I wasn't going to allow me not having breasts take my self-esteem. So we decided that that's what we were going to do. And so I went to my doctor the next day. We went to my doctor the next day. And I told her that, we made our decision that I was going to have both breasts removed. Now, she didn't have to take my right breast, but she had to take my left breast because I had 2 stages of cancer, and the invasive area of cancer was near blood vessel. So I had to get that breast removed. So when I told her I was going to get both breasts removed, she said, are you sure? And I said, I'm absolutely positive. And she says, okay, I'll have the plastic surgery in there. And I said, no, ma'am, we're not going to have no plastic surgery in there. I want you to take them off. I said, I was raised by my grandparents. And if my grandmother was living, I know she would have said to me, baby, let them people take your breasts and make yourself satisfied. And that's exactly what I'm going to do. I want you to take these breasts, and I'm going to make myself satisfied. And so that's what we did. I'm cancer-free. My doctor was able to get all of the cancer out. I was very fortunate that I did not have to do chemo or radiation. However, I have to take an aromatase inhibitor for 5 years. And my oncotype, which is a test that is given to cancer patients to see what the chances of reoccurrence is. You get a score between 0 and 100, and if your score is a 30 or higher, then the chances of cancer returning is greater. So my score was a 7, and in the Bible, 7 means completion. So I am completely healed, and I thank God daily for sparing my life and for allowing me to survive breast cancer. Now, I want you to take from this, all of you, What I want you to take from this is early detection is the key, especially if you have a family history or if something doesn't feel right. You know your body. Be your own advocate. Be aggressive. Don't just settle for someone telling you that this is what it is and this is it and this is the way that it's going to be. You fight for yourself. Don't let fear stop you, because fear can cost you your life.
Hello, I'm Brenda Davis Morrell, and I was diagnosed with uterine cancer in March 2005. I was a warden at Dooley State Prison, a prison that housed 1,300 inmates. And prior to that, I had traveled to different locations periodically as a warden. And the first thing I would do is I would relocate my doctors, my medical records. I would get new doctors in all areas. In March 2004, I got promoted to Chief of Prison Operations over all of the prison's residential facilities where the inmates reside for the Georgia Department of Corrections. That promotion required that I move to the Atlanta area. Our central office at that time was downtown on Martin Luther King Jr. Avenue, and I had to find a doctor. I waited about a year before I found an OBGYN doctor, and I was just going for a routine pap smear because that's what I always did when I would relocate. I would find new doctors. When I went to the doctor's office, that was the doctor that had been recommended, it was so crowded, I asked not to see that doctor, but just to see a doctor. And they did have a relatively young doctor there, and they said, well, you could see her. I said, okay. And when she did the pap smear, she shared with me that she noticed an abnormality in my uterus. It appeared enlarged. And she asked me if I wanted a sonogram. And I asked her, did I need a sonogram? And she said yes, and that's when she shared with me that she noticed some abnormalities that appeared enlarged. So she scheduled me for a sonogram. I went for that, and I had to go back to the doctor after the sonogram, like the next week. And the original doctor I was scheduled to see was talking, and she was talking like we had met. I had never met her. And they were having this long conversation about whether they had done a biopsy or not, just like I was not in the room. And finally, I interrupted. I said, ma'am, ask me. I said, what is it do you want to know? And she said, well, have you had a biopsy? I said, no, I've not. Do I need a biopsy? And she shared with me at that time that the sonogram had revealed some abnormalities, and I needed a biopsy. And I said, okay. I said, well, I've not had it, so let's do the biopsy. And she did the biopsy. When she did the biopsy, she had told me it would be 2 to 3 weeks before, she would get back with me. But about a week later, they called me. I was at work, and she called to say that I needed to come into the office the next day. And I looked at my watch, and at the time, the hospital was Henry Long, which was very close to where I was. And I said, oh no, I'll be there in a few minutes. And I left work, and I went to the doctor's office. And she was so nervous, the doctor was, when I got there. I still recall she had a radio playing, and she kept fidgeting with that radio, saying she couldn't turn it off. And I finally told her, unplug it. And but while she was fidgeting, it dropped in my spirit that something probably was not right. And when she finished, she said, well, I have bad news. I said, would you just spit it out? And I was talking to her at the same level that I'm talking to you. And she said, you have cancer. You have uterine cancer. And I said, okay. I said, that's the diagnosis, what's the plan? And she said that's the attitude that she wanted to hear. And she went on and told me about this other doctor that specialized in that. He was an OBGYN oncologist. And we made an appointment and I went to him. But when I got there, what he did was he didn't take her word for it. He did another biopsy. And he confirmed that the diagnosis was uterine cancer. Oh, by the way, the pap smear was normal. I repeat, the pap smear was normal. Dr. Spann told me that the plan for treatment was he was going to do surgery. He was going to do a complete hysterectomy. He was going to cut me from under my breast all the way down to the top of my pubic area to do the surgery. And I thought about it and I thought about it. And I said, Dr. Spann, understand that I plan to live. I said, but I just really don't see in this day and time why you need to cut me open like a hog. I said, now, understand if that's what you need to do for me to live, you cut away. I said, but I just don't think that would be necessary. And he kind of laughed about it. And he said, well, Brenda, I'll see what I can do. I'll see about doing it laparoscopically because I'm going to have to do a complete hysterectomy. I said, okay. And I went in and had the surgery. And he did do it laparoscopically. He did not have to cut me open, as I put it, like a hog. But had he needed to, that would have been fine. My treatment also consisted of internal and external radiation. I was followed up for 3 years, alternating between the OBGYN oncologist and the radiation oncologist. I would see them every 3 months for 3 years. And then it increased to every 6 months for 2 years. And now I see them annually. During the time that this happened, this was in March of 2005. We had chartered in December 2004. And this was like 3 months later. And so I was not really close to any of the sorors. But I remembered a church I had gone to when I was warden at Dooley State Prison. And I stopped in there one day when I was on my way to visit one of the prisons in South Georgia. And this was before I had the surgery. And the pastor prayed with me. I got on the phone and I called people I knew were connected, and I had them praying and fasting with me. I trusted God. That was my support group. I said, by Jesus' stripes, I'm already healed. I'm standing on that. My family was very supportive, but when I initially told them, they started crying and going on. I told them I had no need for all of those tears because I was not going to go any place. I choose life. I do not choose death. Cancer was just a temporary situation. I've been cancer-free for 6 years. God is good all the time. I give him all the grace, all the glory. In Jesus' name, I'm thankful.